Welcome to Backstage with Kennedy. This little show will be your remedy. From Toronto, spanning across the sea. Cool people, lots of laughs. This is your favorite podcast.
Hello and welcome. My name's Kennedy from the Backstage with Kennedy podcast. I got a wicked guest today, Murray from a band by the name of UIC. If you don't know of them, they were absolutely wicked in the 80s, still rocking to this day. Really enjoyed getting that sneak peek on their new album. So you're going to want to definitely check that out. How you doing today, Murray?
Great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to have you on. It's definitely a pleasure. I loved your resume, reading that up. That was really sick. So
yeah, we've been around for a while.
Yeah, for sure. So what was the inspiration behind the name for UIC?
Well, actually, it's funny because the band started in 1982.
Yeah.
And in 1982, I was 20 years old. And, we were all young guys. In 82, there was a really bad recession. Mm-hmm. And so none of us were working. So we were all unemployed. And what you know now is EI, employment insurance.
Yeah.
It used to be called UIC, Unemployment Insurance Commission.
Okay.
So we were all unemployed and collecting unemployment. So we decided, why not call our band UIC? Because that's how we were living.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, and I mean, as musicians too, right? Like I'm sure
yeah.
musicians are on it than not on it.
Well, what's funny about that too, because when we first started doing shows, we were putting up these signs like UIC and all this stuff, and we actually got contacted by the government, who actually thought it was like some sort of a revolt or something that was no kidding. They thought we were actually planning some sort of a coup or something, and we were like, no, we're just playing rock and roll. No coup.
That's pretty punk rock. When the government starts knocking on your door.
yeah, there was no coup. We were just a bunch of young guys playing punk rock.
I love it. So you came up around the same time as Teenage Head, like kind of in that era there. What was it like having those powerhouses in the scene around the same time?
Well, it was great actually back then. I mean, we kind of grew up in Exeter, Ontario, which is a small town just north of London, and obviously Teenage Head, we were big Teenage Head fans and Ramones fans, and when we started out, there was no bands in our actual area playing. There were some bands in London that we knew, but yeah, it was the real scene was happening in Toronto, which is why we ended up moving there eventually in 1984. We moved to Toronto to kind of get closer to that scene. But yeah, there was a lot of cool rock and roll happening around that time, and just a bunch of young kids who learned how to play their instruments, and when we heard bands like the Ramones and Teenage Head, like we said, hey, I think we can do that. Right, because I grew up on a steady diet with my, when I was really young, of Zeppelin and Aerosmith and Sabbath and all this stuff, and we were like, well, we can't play that. That's a little bit over our heads. But then we heard the Ramones, and we can play that, and then we fell in love with it. So,
wicked. So you said there that your band was originally from like the London area. I know you and I spoke a little bit earlier about how the band's pretty much all in downtown Toronto and Oshawa, Curtis. So now that things have moved on, but like back in the past, I guess, when you were out in the London area, did you go to Detroit a lot for shows? Or was that not really bumping at that point?
Well, actually, when we were kids, like when we were teenagers and stuff, it was closer for us to go to see rock shows in Detroit, because where we grew up, Exeter is only like about an hour and a half to Detroit. Mm-hmm. We're about 45 minutes to the border at Port Huron in Sarnia. And to come to Toronto was a 2.5, 3 hour drive, right? So it made more sense for us to go to Detroit to shows than it did to go to Toronto. So that's what we used to do, right? So, and then we were, the name of the album's actually FM Hill, and there's a story behind that because that's where we used to go to a hill, a high spot where we grew up, which we called FM Hill because we would get Detroit radio there, and we could catch all the Detroit radio late at night, and we'd hear like the Stooges and the MC5 and this cool music that we got exposed to by going to FM Hill. So it kind of became a spot where we hung out.
That's really sick. So you touched on the album a little bit there. Can you tell people what to expect out of this album?
Well, I mean, I guess for people who have heard UIC before, this is actually our fifth full length album. And I mean, obviously the band's evolved in a sense that, you know, the production values on this album are really good. You know, we recorded it in Toronto at Canterbury Sound with Jeremy Darby, and then Ian Blurton mixed the album. And so, you know, we're really happy with everything. I mean, obviously I love the older records too. I mean, they were just much more lo-fi, right? Because we were dealing with very low budgets, and we you know, we went in and recorded. We didn't know a lot about the whole recording process, especially our first record, and you know, we had all these songs and we just go in and record them. So this album is kind of probably the best recorded album we've done, and certainly you know, it's got some cool songs on it. Some of them are typical UIC stuff, and some of it is a little bit of a departure, I guess you would say. And we had UIC kind of morphed in the early 2000s, and we came out as a band called the Chickens in the actually late 90s, and we just went out and put out 2 albums as the Chickens, which were really great albums. I think they were very solid albums, but it was a bit of a departure from what UIC. It was a little bit more I don't know, pop garage or power pop kind of stuff, and so a little bit of a departure from what the UIC thing. So I think this is a great marriage of the Chickens kind of thing and the UIC thing. It sort of marries the two together. Yeah, I'm really happy about it.
So you mentioned there Ian Blurton. I actually had the pleasure. So I'm a hip hop artist. I was. And I got to perform. I got called up on stage one time to see a band by the name of the Organ Thieves play. And I got to jump up on stage with those guys. And Ian Blurton was on that bill. And I was blown away by Ian's skills. He's something else. How was it working with him in the studio and having
well, it's weird. We worked with Ian before. Like, we've known Ian since probably the mid 80s. Because Change Your Heart, who was Ian's band that he was in the 80s, and UIC's album came out on Fringe Product at the same time. We actually did a co-record release party, which is now the Phoenix, was the Diamond Club back then. We did a co-record release party that night. So we've known Ian for a long time, and you know, we've done things with them since. And Ian was just an obvious choice to mix the record. We love what Ian does. We know he gets what we want, because he understands what we're doing. So you're not dealing with a guy who, you know, you go in and he thinks he's going to make you sound like Bon Jovi or something. You know, he understood what we wanted. But the funny thing about it, because of COVID, we actually, this is how much we trust Ian Blurton. We sent him all the master tapes and said, "Go nuts, Ian." And Ian would send us back song. Well, what do you think of this? And so we weren't actually in the studio with him when he was mixing. Oh, wow. Yeah, he mixed it on his own. So
that's a lot of faith right there.
Yeah, we had a lot of faith in Ian.
I mean, if there's a guy to have faith in, I think it's Ian.
I would agree, and we did. We just said, "Here, Ian, here's the master tapes. Do your magic."
Yeah. So you have a song on your album called "Fly Danny Fly." It's like an homage to a former band member of UIC. How important was it to have that song on the project?
Well, it was important to me. I wrote that song particularly. That was my song, and it was really important. I mean, Danny was part of UIC. He was not a complete original member, but he moved to Toronto with us. So at UIC, when we were back in Exeter, there was a few in the band, and then when we finally finalized the lineup, Danny was in it, and Dave Robinson, the singer, because we had a different singer and a different bass player before. And so when they got in the band, that really solidified. That was UIC. So Danny, Danny was we called him Hack. His nickname was Hack. And he was just a special guy. He was part of the band forever. I mean, we all grew up together. I mean, I played hockey with Dan, and when we were kids, like little kids, but way before music. And it was me and Dan and Fred who would, hang out late at night in downtown Exeter, up to no good sometimes, and talking about, we should put a band together. We should put a band together, and that's, he was really, really part of the whole thing. So that song is really special, because, was just, he was a big part of UIC's sound and just the whole thing. And so we miss him dearly, and it was sad, but he would have wanted us to go on, and go on we did. So that song's special.
I really enjoyed it, and I felt the lyrics on it. It was really, really quite a nice song.
Thanks.
So no problem. Just to step into your world here, behind the kit. Every drummer has their own inspirations, and favorite drummers who they really like, really, really appreciate more than others. Who's yours? Mine was always, I was not a drummer, but my guy was always Neil Peart. Again, rest his soul, but Neil Peart was my guy. Who's your favorite drummer?
If I had to pick my favorite drummer, and it doesn't really resonate with how I play, because he's infinitely much more talented than I could ever be. I mean, obviously, I've always loved the drumming of John Bonham. I think that I still think, even if I add Neil Peart into the mix, I think John's the best of all time. And there's a big argument. You can have a debate about that, who's better. But when it comes to my playing, I mean, I realized my limitations at a young age, and I said, hey, I got to play within myself. So I really looked to guys like, originally Billy Idol's original band was called Generation X. And they had a drummer called Mark Laff. And Mark Laff was a drummer that I really looked up to and tried to really emulate. And it was funny because, those type of drummers, I liked a lot of those types of drummers, and they weren't the Neil Peart wind out drummers. They were solid kind of punk rock drummers. And probably the best compliment was that when we played MC5, the MC50 show at the Danforth Theater there, Danforth Concert Hall there a couple years ago, the drummer who was the drummer from Fugazi was playing with MC50, and they watched our set, which was really cool. And then afterwards he said, you know what, your playing really reminds me of Grant from Husker Du. And I went, hey, that's a compliment, because I always loved his playing too. So I mean, I that's kind of who I tried to emulate. But if I had to pick a favorite drummer of all time, it's got to be Bonzo, John Bonham. He's sick grooves, and just, I mean, yeah.
It's always a tough question to ask musicians, because you mentioned that you played hockey and stuff growing up. I feel like sports, you can almost be like, okay, this guy is better than this guy based on statistics, based on this.
Sure.
But you can't do that with music. It's so tough to do, because everybody has their own styles and their own grooves. You know what I mean?
And it's hard to pick a favorite drummer, because, I loved the way Tommy Ramone played the drums on the first Ramones album, and it was bare bones. I mean, you couldn't get any simpler than that. But it was attack. It was just everything. So, I mean, every genre. And then I can look at a guy like Buddy Rich, and he blows my mind. These jazz drummers that are like otherworldly. And I can sit there and say, that's unbelievable. I wish I could do that.
So Murray, I know you've been around in the scene for quite a while, so you probably got a ton of stories. What's your favorite venue that you've played at, and do you have a story from that venue? Because I'm trying to get this discovery. I'm trying to ensure that, we're getting that exposure out to the venues. And I want people to know some of these stories so that they can be like, oh, you know what? Murray did this, has this story from this venue. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, we played a lot of clubs over the years, but one of my favorite clubs to play always was Call the Office in London.
Mm-hmm.
I loved playing Call the Office, and it was twofold. I mean, obviously, it was kind of a hometown crowd, so it was always a fun night, kind of a reunion. You're seeing lots of people you didn't see all the time, and we used to have some crazy shows there. It was packed, it was small, it was sweaty, and they're the best. I mean, you can play in a big place like, and it's fun to play at the Danforth Music Hall. That's, in front of a couple thousand people. That's awesome too. But you can't really replace playing in a small, club that holds 300 or 400 people that's packed and it's really sweaty on a hot summer night in the Strip. And I mean, there's something about that is really special. I mean, we used to play another club I used to love in Toronto to play was the Silver Dollar.
Yeah.
And years ago, Elliot Lefko used to promote shows, and he was at the Silver Dollar, and they were great, sweaty. It was not a great big size club, maybe held 350 people, but it would just get jammed in there, right? And I'll never forget the one night we were playing there, and it was a typical UIC show. It was like sweaty and loud and anything, and we were coming to the end of our set. I don't remember whether it was an encore or whether it was just the end of our set. And anyway, the end of the song, and I'm at the very back of the stage, right? So, and it was very skinny back there. There just wasn't a lot of room. And I never played a big kit. So I came up stood up for the big cymbal crash at the end of the song. And when I sat back down, my drum stool had shifted back and the one leg had kind of gone off the back of the stage. So when I sat down, I went ass over apple cart backwards, and my feet came up, kicked my cymbals over, knocked the drums over. Now people thought that was part of the show. No, that was just me being a dumbass and back at the stage. And it was a bit of a drop too. It was a bit of a drop back there. But I always loved playing the Silver Dollar too. Nice sweaty room.
I think it's so obviously I don't Silver Dollar's not a thing anymore. I'm pretty sure they still have like the original sign outside the venue.
I think they do. And it was operational till a few years ago anyway. I don't know what they were doing there. Like rock bands weren't playing there, so I don't know what they were doing, whether they were doing blues or something like that. I don't know. But I mean, nowadays, it's pretty hard to argue that the Horseshoe is one of the better clubs you're ever going to play.
Yeah.
From a live band standpoint, where you have just, once again, it's that sweatiness, it's that tight stage and great stage sound and just people right up front, and that's the kind of club that I gotta think. I guess I'd like to find out, but I gotta think that we obviously we were a club band, so we didn't do these big arena type shows. I gotta think that's got to be hard to connect with your audience when you're on this huge stage and the people are so far back. I mean, there's nothing better than a club gig where the people are right there in your face.
And the Horseshoe's like that perfect size room, I feel. Like it's not too big, it's not too small. It's that perfect size.
It is. It's really perfect. And if you get in the right spot there, the sound is great. From a band standpoint, on stage, I find that to be one of the better sounding stages. Like, you've got a great monitor mix, you can hear everything. Because not always do you have that. I mean, as a drummer, it's a pet peeve of mine that, you show up at some of these clubs and you got a shitty monitor mix for the drummer, and I'm playing off of memory, I can't even hear what the guitars are doing or anything, and that's a horrible feeling. So at the Horseshoe, you always got a really good monitor mix. So yeah, I love the Horseshoe, and I love the staff there. I mean, just everybody's great. In fact, the first song on the album, Superstar, the very first verse of that song is all about the Horseshoe. So and about hanging out the Horseshoe, and Teddy Fury at the back of the bar, with the cooking rockabilly do. Yeah. That's
yeah. Tanya's over there. Yeah, love Tanya. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So speak of the Horseshoe, there is a show coming up. I know that there's been some date changes because of obviously COVID and the pandemic. Can you tell the people a little bit more about what this show's about, what's going to happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, we started recording this album, I don't know, about 8 months ago. We started planning it about a year and a half ago, but we recorded it about 8 months ago, and then the plan was to get it out in the fall before Christmas. Obviously, when you release a record, one of the best things about releasing a record is having a record release party, and so all of a sudden COVID comes in and punches us in the face, and okay, so no record release party, and we're like, wah wah wah. Like, how do you have a record? How do you release a record without a record release party? And then the Horseshoe approached us and said, "What about this?" And we were like, "Yeah, at least we can do something, right?" And then, like, literally, I've been doing these interviews for the last week and a half. I've been doing a bunch of interviews, and just before I was about to go, an hour before I was going to do one of the interviews, I get a message that they've had to postpone it and push the date back. So yeah, so it was supposed to be on October 24th. We're pretty bummed that it's not happening then, because it was simultaneous. The album's coming out on the 23rd, and so to be the next night, which would have been exciting. But now, because of COVID and everything, the Ontario government has closed all the bars, and it's been pushed back to November 21st. And it's a live stream event. It's going to go all around the world. And I mean, UIC was fortunate enough in the 80s to have reached them. We never toured Europe, but we had fans in Europe and whatnot, and even Japan. We actually were covered by a Japanese band, covered 2 of our songs, and we ended up in a Japanese garage rock documentary and stuff. So we have some fans around there that hopefully they'll be able to see it. So it goes around the world. It's a live stream event. It's from the stage of the Horseshoe, and it's a way also for us to make some money, because I mean, it's been hard without any live gigs, and we paid for that record, and now we'd like to get some money back. So it is a chance for bands to make some money, because I think the live stream costs like $15 or something like that. And the money goes to the band. I mean, there's some expenses and stuff, but it's a chance for the bands to make some money, because it's really hard for musicians right now to make a buck, right? It's just really hard.
Absolutely. No, I feel that. I'm glad that you're doing this show, though. That's you're spot on, absolutely, about the idea of you have to have the release party. You have to. A single, I was like, I need a release party.
Well, the thing is, the best thing about putting out an album is that you hope that you do, a record release party in Toronto, and then one in Hamilton, and one in London, and one in Ottawa. Yeah, you got a chance to really make some events out of it, and actually make some money, sell some merch, and make some money, and get your stuff out there. So now, I mean, it kind of sucks that we're only going to have one, because it doesn't make much sense to have a a live stream from Toronto, and then what do you do? A live stream from London? What's the difference, right? So you get one shot at this. So we're going to do this live stream, and hopefully everybody will tune in. And if you haven't seen UIC before, I mean, we're pretty, our singer is incredible energy guy, and we just always put on a good live show and have fun with the live show thing. So
I love it, man.
Check it out.
Where can people so obviously they can find your music on all the platforms. Where can people get your merch? Where can people get records if you guys are selling those?
Well, the records actually coming out on the record's actually coming out being distributed by Warner Music. So you can buy it through Warner, you can buy it through iTunes. We're going to be selling it on our website, UIC Canada. If you look up, Google UIC Canada, it'll take you to our website. And that's where you can also buy T-shirts and merch and stuff like that. UIC Canada, www.uiccanada.com, I believe is the website. I should know it, but yeah, if you Google UIC Canada, the band, you'll find us. And so it's a place to buy the record and to buy merch and I mean, obviously too, I mean, look us up on Facebook, UIC Canada. Once again, UIC Band Canada on Facebook. We'd love to get more and more. I love it because, back in the day when we were doing this in the 80s and early 90s, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no social media. In fact, when we first started, there was no email. Okay. So there was no way to spread the word. We used to have to go out and physically put up posters, like hundreds and hundreds and thousands of posters for a show, and word of mouth, and Now Magazine, and hope that a paper printed the that you were playing. And so the social media thing, although it has its negatives for those negative Nellies who spend time on it being negative, but it can also be a real positive thing for bands to get the word out and to get exposure and for people to find them. So go ahead. Well, just UIC Canada again, UIC Canada Facebook page and UIC Canada YouTube. There's a bunch of videos up. So UIC, the band from Canada, you'll find us.
Yeah. I'm forever grateful for that, the ability that we can do that now. Because I even like talking to Al Nolan from the Almighty Trigger Happy quite a few episodes ago. And he was telling me that if you were unfortunate enough to live in like a small town, people were flying like vinyls into their towns because it was just the only way you could do it.
It was really, I mean, back in the day, I mean, it was really tough. I mean, I hope that the younger musicians realize, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to ask Ian Blurton how many times he toured back and forth across Canada. It was an astronomical number that the guy did it, and he did it before and we did it before there was any social media to help you out, right? So the young bands today, not that they have it easy, because it's never easy to get your music out there and get played, especially because, I mean, let's face it, if it wasn't for college radio and some CBC and for guys like you and blogs, and the music just doesn't get out there. It's hard. You got to look for it, and it's a bit saddening at this point, in my opinion. Anyway, I mean, there could be people that disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think in this day and age, nothing against Rush or the Guess Who or Tragically Hip or any of them, but I mean, do they really need to get all the airplay? Couldn't they spin some of these new bands? Would it really kill them? Yeah, would it really kill them? Would it really kill them to get their CanCon from something other than another Rush song? And like I said, nothing against Rush, but they had their day, and there's a lot of bands that I don't know. That's just me. I think they could do a better job on being able to play more music on the radio. I kind of find it insulting that they think that I'm too stupid to discern. And they tell me, well, no, you need to hear this song 5 times today. No, just
can't even listen to the radio for that.
I wish they'd go back. I wish we could turn back time, back to a time when FM radio was so cool, because let's say you were a DJ, you would decide what you're going to play on that show. Right? You would pick the bands you're going to play, and you say, you know what? I'm going to play the whole side of the Stooges' first album, and that's up to you, right? And that was so cool, because DJs were personalities back then, and people were attracted to a DJ because he played a certain kind of music, or he was a bit adventurous. Radio really needs that right now. If in this day and age, they really need to reinvent themselves and get some personality back into it, because it's really not much fun to me, anyway.
No, I'm totally with you.
If somebody was to say, you could have your own radio show and play what you want to play and interview who you want to interview, and that would be fun, because then they can go, hey, I really like your show. I'm gonna tune in every week and record it and listen to it, right? I mean, I just think radio needs to reinvent themselves again, and sometimes looking to the past is a great way to build yourself up for the future.
Well, who knows? Maybe I'll go that route down the road.
Yeah, there you are.
We'll see.
Building yourself up for that very time when it becomes cool again, and you'll have your own radio show.
Exactly. All right, Murray. Well, I like to keep these nice and short, man, but I really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Everybody, please check out UIC, wicked band, and check out that new album when it comes out on the 23rd.
I really appreciate it, man, having us on and give me a chance to speak. And I mean, obviously, you have a group of people that have like UIC who, they maybe have never heard of us before. So it's a new demographic. Every time we can reach a new demographic and they think, hey, those old guys rock, that's a good thing.
So that's what I'm doing here. Just I want people to get exposure on good people. That's all I'm saying.
Perfect. I really appreciate it, man. Keep it going.
Thank you, Murray. You take care, brother. Easy.